Cold, darkness, pain. These were the sensations that greeted Malcolm as he stirred from unconsciousness, his mind slowly clawing its way back to awareness. He lay on a cold, damp floor, his head throbbing in relentless agony, each pulse a reminder of his dire situation. He tried to remember how he got there, but his mind was a swirling vortex of confusion and terror, memories just out of reach. He struggled to sit up, his limbs heavy and sluggish, as if weighed down by invisible chains. He was in a large, cavernous room, its vastness amplifying his sense of isolation. The air was thick with the stench of mildew and decay, making each breath a struggle. Cobwebs draped from the vaulted ceiling like macabre decorations, adding to the room's eerie atmosphere. A single flickering light bulb cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the floor, creating an unsettling, almost hypnotic effect. Malcolm realized with a jolt that he was shackled to the wall by a thick iron chain, the cold metal biting into his skin. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the room, each beat echoing his growing dread. Panic surged through Malcolm, threatening to overwhelm him. He yanked at the chain, his efforts met with a resounding clang that echoed through the emptiness. Despair, cold and sharp, pierced through his fear. He was trapped. His gaze swept around the room, searching for an escape, a clue, anything. The walls were made of rough-hewn stone, bare except for strange, cryptic symbols etched into the surface. They seemed to writhe and contort in the flickering light, mocking his helplessness. Malcolm closed his eyes, fighting back the rising tide of panic. He had to think. He had to understand why he was here. But the more he strained his memory, the deeper he sank into the abyss of his forgotten past. A low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows, sending a fresh wave of terror through Malcolm. He wasn't alone. He held his breath, listening intently. The sound came again, closer this time. It was a sound that spoke of unimaginable horrors, of things that lurked just beyond the veil of darkness. He opened his eyes, straining to see through the gloom. Something moved in the shadows, a flicker of movement too swift to follow. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic prisoner desperate for release. He was at the mercy of an unknown captor, trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. A cold sweat broke out on his skin as he waited, every nerve on high alert for whatever horrors awaited him. As Malcolm's eyes adjusted to the dimness, he noticed a faint glow emanating from beneath a heavy wooden door on the opposite side of the room. It was a sliver of light in the suffocating darkness, a beacon of hope in the face of despair. With renewed determination, he pulled himself to his feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in his head. The chain rattled ominously with each movement, a constant reminder of his confinement. He shuffled towards the door, dragging his heavy shackles behind him. Each step was a victory against the invisible force that held him captive. As he drew closer to the door, the faint glow intensified, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around him like phantoms. He reached out a trembling hand towards the handle. Section 5. The Cruel Jest of Hope. The door creaked open with a deafening groan, revealing a small adjacent chamber. The sound echoed through the empty halls, sending shivers down Malcolm's spine. In the center of the room, resting on a pedestal, was a small antique music box. It looked out of place, almost as if it had been waiting for him. Its delicate carvings seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, each intricate detail telling a story of its own. A single ray of light, piercing through a crack in the ceiling, illuminated the music box with an almost sacred glow. The light seemed to dance on its surface, casting eerie shadows. Malcolm stared at it, his pulse quickening. His mind raced with possibilities and fears. Was this the key to his escape? The answer seemed just out of reach. tantalizingly close yet frustratingly distant? Or was it another cruel trick designed to torment him further? He had to know. The uncertainty gnawed at him. He had to take the chance. There was no turning back now. With agonizing slowness, he pulled himself towards the music box, his eyes never leaving its intricate carvings. Each step felt like an eternity. Each step was a gamble, a test of his resolve. The air grew thicker with tension, every breath a struggle. Section 6. The Unveiling of Truth. As Malcolm reached for the music box, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the chamber. He recoiled in horror, his hand freezing in mid-air. The scream was his own, echoing from a hidden speaker somewhere in the room. He spun around, searching frantically for the source of the sound, and then he saw it. Scrawled across the wall in what looked like dried blood were 3 words that sent a chill down his spine. "Remember your sins." His blood ran cold. This was no random act. This was personal. Someone knew his darkest secrets, his deepest regrets, and they were using them to torture him. Section 7. The Price of Survival. Malcolm's gaze darted around the room, desperation clawing at his sanity. He had to escape this nightmare, this twisted game designed to break him, but how? His eyes fell upon the music box once more. It was no longer a beacon of hope, but a symbol of his tormentor's twisted game. He had to make a choice. Would he succumb to the terror that threatened to consume him? Or would he fight back, confront his past, and face the consequences of his actions? The music box seemed to beckon him, its delicate tune a siren song of despair and hope. With trembling hands, he reached out and opened it. Section 8. A Legacy of Despair. As the haunting melody of the music box filled the chamber, a hidden mechanism clicked into place, echoing through the dark, eerie room. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a way out. But Malcolm's relief was short-lived, as a sense of dread quickly replaced his fleeting hope. For beyond the opening he saw not freedom, but another room identical to the first, a mirror image of his own prison. And in the center of that room, chained to the wall, was another figure, a shadowy presence that seemed to reflect his own suffering. A figure that mirrored his own terror and despair, a haunting doppelganger of his own tortured soul. Malcolm stared in horror, the weight of his situation crushing him as the reality of his endless torment began to sink in. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a nightmarish cycle. He was trapped in a cycle of terror, destined to relive his worst nightmares alongside countless other victims, each one suffering in their own personal hell. The music box continued to play, its sweet melody now a chilling reminder of his eternal torment. A never-ending symphony of despair.